Hello again. Now, today I'm going to talk about something that I consider to be a foundational concept in any relationship being successful. So, if you want to have a successful relationship, you really need to know this. This is one of those lessons that they don't teach at school. And yet, I think, like ABC, whoever decided ABC was more important than these things, than attachment style, your attachment style, and some basic understanding about attachment styles. So, but fundamentally, it was John Bowlby's work on attachment theory that explained how early interaction with caregivers shape our expectations and our behavior in adult relationships. And so that became known as attachment theory. His focus was on caregivers, and that actually was expanded on by Mary Ainsworth, for those who are interested. And between them, they identified three main attachment styles: secure, anxious, and avoidant. And I'm going to explain more about that in a moment. However, it does seem to me that the whole thing of attachment styles is much more complex than that. Um, I, I would say a look at prenatal and perinatal psychology, so how life was before you were born, while you were still in the womb, has a bearing, and what kind of a birth you had, and all of those things. Pre and perinatal psychology shows us how they impact on it. But let's stick with the attachment styles for now, and then just stay with me to hear some more finer and salient points on that. So the first one, the secure attachment, well, that's the least problematic one, as you can imagine. Securely attached individuals typically grow up in environments where their emotional needs were consistently met. So where probably they had a good couple of parents who got on well together, who enjoyed good health, and the environment was, peaceful and conducive to peaceful living. Um, those kind of individuals who didn't have much disruption in their life or trauma, they tend to feel quite comfortable in relationships. Um, they tend to be quite open in their communication and their emotional expression. They'll say how they feel. You don't need to extract it from them. They'll just tell you how they feel. They have high levels of trust and empathy. They tend to be able to tune in easily to what their partner's thinking and feeling. They're quite, tuned in. And their ability to resolve conflicts. They're able to listen, listen and hear, not just listen, but hear also what their partner's saying. And because they can tune in and they've got empathy, they get it and they understand. So that really is a big factor in what makes for successful couple relationships. But um, even securely attached individuals with a secure attachment style, they can run into challenges as well in relationships if they happen to have a partner who um, has an anxious attachment style or an avoidant attachment style, which can happen. People have a bit of a mismatch, and misunderstandings can arise if the securely attached doesn't really understand their partner's fears and needs. Looking at the insecure attachments, um, firstly, the anxious attachment. Well, anxiously attached individuals, the way the theories put it out, are often experience inconsistent caregiving during childhood, leading to heightened sensitivity and sensitivity to rejection or being rejected, and a deep, deep fear of abandonment. Um, but what I want to say is, we know now that child rearing practices, especially for those people who were born in hospital, there was a practice of taking the babies and putting them in the nursery for the night. So, in the days where, certainly when I had my three children, the practice was that women, because I'm a woman of a certain age, and it may be that your parents are of that age, the practice was to mothers had to stay in hospital for a week, and you definitely went into hospital to have babies, especially if you were small. I'm 4 feet 9, so I had all three of my children in hospital and stayed for a week because that's the way things were done, and you did what you were told in those days. And the practice that they had was to take the babies to the nursery for the night. So the babies were removed from mothers and they were placed in a nursery until the next morning. So I think it's no wonder that we have such a rash of mental health going around. That's a contributing factor. So some of it's not just about the caregiving, it's about inconsistent caregiving. And the caregiving is in the very impressionable first days are affected by the environment and the mother's environment, what kind of care she can give. But also in those days, the uh, the gold standard was to feed the baby, bottle feed, 10 o'clock, uh, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 6 o'clock were the times to feed them. And the women were taught, and actually frowned upon if they didn't stick to it, they were taught to uh, just feed the baby at those times. Don't pick them up in between times because um, they'd get spoiled. And if they cry, leave them to cry it out. Don't pick them up. So all those child rearing practices have an effect. It's not just um, how the theorists put it out. But if you were one of those people who finished up with an anxious attachment, it may be that your mother went in hospital. It may be that she had postnatal depression. It may be that there was some situation with you as a baby that involved you going into hospital for some kind of treatment or minor surgery or whatever, which is a traumatic experience. Being brought into the world by cesarean or by use of forceps or various obstetric traumas. So all of those things have a bearing on the attachment style that you form. So it's not just about how your mother was with you, because there's a lot of mother blaming that goes on that has nothing to do with how the mother took care of you. It's all the other factors as well. So if you have got an anxious attachment, and if any of those factors were around for you, then the tendency might be that you have an anxious attachment, that you crave closeness in your relationships, you can be a bit clingy, and that um, you want constant reassurance. And if that's the case in your relationship, you might be what's known as codependent. So see my video on codependence, and you may tend to overanalyze your partner's behavior for any signs of rejection, and you'd be particularly sensitive to picking up any signs of rejection. Um, you may also have trust issues, that you find it difficult to trust your partner fully, even if there's no evidence of betrayal. It's because of the early imprints that you had, that you'll be left, that they will leave you, or that they don't want you. So common problems with an anxious attachment is jealousy, possessiveness, an overdependence on your partner for self-esteem, and escalating conflicts due to perceived threats to the relationship. So I have a follow-up video to this one on solutions. What do you do about these different attachment styles? So the third attachment style is avoidant attachment. And of course, that's another insecure attachment. So avoidant individuals likely had, according to the theorists, likely had caregivers who were emotionally unavailable or dismissive. Now, that would describe how a woman a mother suffering from postnatal depression might be. She might not be emotionally available. She might be there, but not be emotionally available because she is in a depression and she's not aware of being unavailable. She may not register the baby's needs um, because she's in a depressed state. Um, if during your infancy your parents were having a difficult time in their relationship, and couples often do because of lack of sleep and other things, that can impact and cause avoidant attachment. So the tendencies in relationships from people with anxious attachment is that they learn to be very independent. They are very self-reliant. They have difficulty opening up emotionally because they get used to not being able to rely on somebody being there for them. And they have difficulty opening up. They've got difficulty showing vulnerability. Um, and they tend to avoid deep emotional intimacy, often appear quite distant. Um, and I guess the tendency is to blame them for that because the partner then feels neglected or emotionally shut out. Um, the avoidant partner may dismiss relationship issues as trivial, um, and how that because how they were treated was dismissively, and they can then treat people dismissively, and they struggle with long-term commitment. They are the commitment phobes amongst you. Take the quiz below. Well, you'll see the link below the video here, and that will you can take the quiz and see what your attachment style is. The last attachment style, which was added on later, was a disorganized attachment. And the disorganized attachment often stems from early trauma or abuse. It's more likely to be trauma, and it's just as likely to be obstetric or perinatal trauma or even prenatal trauma. I mean, for example, when my mother was having me, it was a concealed pregnancy because it was back in 1946 when and it was you know, a single mom. It was classed as an illegitimacy at the time, so it was hidden. So that had an impact on me, and I've had lots of therapy for it. So you could say my attachment style has often been disorganized, where it creates conflict between desires for intimacy and fear of being hurt. So it's a kind of a tendency in relationships to oscillate between craving closeness but pushing your partner away. And there's extreme difficulty in trusting others and a heightened emotional volatility and fear of abandonment. So that kind of attachment style um, can create chaotic relationship patterns and fear-driven conflicts and struggles with emotional regulation. So that's the four uh, attachment styles, and they each have their specific tendencies and recurring issues. They're very common. So the problems that occur mostly are communication breakdowns, where there's insecure attachment styles, especially if both partners have insecure attachment styles. It definitely influences how couples approach their communication. And an avoidant partner can tend to shut down emotionally and create a cycle of frustration, while the anxious uh, attachment style really needs reassurance. So you get that push-pull. Um, there can be a mismatched need for intimacy. Anxiously attached perceive avoidant partners as distant, while avoidant partners may feel overwhelmed by the apparent demands for closeness from an anxious partner. There can be trust issues, um, where both anxious and disorganized attachment styles often struggle with trust, and that can manifest as jealousy, suspicion, or constant checking in. Emotional regulation is another problem that can arise. Disorganized attachment in particular is associated with difficulty managing emotions, and that can lead to conflict. So that's basically what the four attachment styles are. Check yours out in the quiz below, and check out the solutions to attachment style mismatch. Attachment styles do provide a powerful framework for understanding how past experiences shape our present relationships. Absolutely, how you came into the world before, during, and after you came into the world are the biggest factors. Caregiving, the caregiving that you had is a factor as well, but the earlier imprints really do make a difference. So by identifying these tendencies and addressing the common problems and taking intentional steps, you can change it. You can change it. But first of all, you need to know about it. Louise Hay the founder of the publishing company, Hay House, she used to say, you can't clean the dirt if you can't see it. So first of all, you definitely need to know what your attachment style is. And once you know it and your partners, then you can discuss it and start to change it. So watch the follow-on video from this, because couples can create stronger and more fulfilling connections. Sue Johnson, an expert on relationships, says too, love is not the problem, it's the answer. But we must learn how to love in a way that heals, and we can learn and we can change it. Thank you for listening. Bye for now. Bye.